My name is Emma. I'm 34, the operations director at a resort development firm in Denver. I'm the second of four siblings, the only one who didn't follow the success track my parents laid out for us early on. Last week, while waiting for the elevator at noon, I checked my phone and saw a message from Aunt Carol. This year's reunion theme, honoring the Parker legacy, not for those who've lost their way, hope you understand. I reread the words, like they might turn into something less cruel if I stared long enough. But they didn't. The message was as sharp as the chill crawling up the back of my neck. They were hosting the reunion at the Bastion, a five-star hotel downtown. The title deed has my name on it. They have no idea. If you've ever had to choose between honor and family, leave a comment, tap like, share this story, and follow the channel so you won't miss what's ahead. My family, the Parkers, has long stood for traditional success in the Boulder area. My dad, Richard, was once an orthopedic surgeon for the Denver Broncos. My mom, Evelyn, is the general counsel of a tech conglomerate known for her neatly silver hair and legal precision, sharp as a Swiss watch. The other three kids, Michael became a cardiologist, Amanda's a prosecutor, and Kyle is a venture capital director in Manhattan. And me, Emma, I design spaces, not interior decorating, as they like to condescendingly mislabel it, but experiences. I craft the feeling of being welcomed, seen, and remembered through small choices like elevator lighting or the scent in a hotel lobby that evokes a quiet memory. But to my family, if it's not medicine or law, it's a hobby. I'm not lacking in intelligence. I did well in school. I got a scholarship to Cornell for hospitality management. A decision that left my whole family awkwardly silent the night I announced it. Not proud silence, just confused, then disappointed. I remember my mother's look, cold, like a glass of water on a glass table. Emma, she said, you could do more than that. For years, I believed that if I worked hard enough, they'd eventually see my worth. But the harder I tried, the wider the distance grew. They raised toasts to one another's accomplishments while changing the subject whenever I spoke, like I was a glitch in the Parker software. This year's reunion was organized by Aunt Carol, as usual. She's my dad's older sister, the self-proclaimed female matriarch of the family since marrying Rich in Texas. She's never held a job a day in her life, but always has an opinion on everyone else's career. At my college graduation, while others hugged me, she leaned in and whispered, "Hotel management sounds more like night shifts at a motel, sweetheart." To Aunt Carol, a salary number matters more than the feeling you leave behind in a room. I keep old texts in a separate folder, not to dwell on pain, but to remember why I stopped showing up. One message from my younger brother, Kyle, reads, "Maybe you should apply as a receptionist at a Marriott. At least your degree would be useful." He sent it after I declined to invest in his crypto startup. I deleted his number that same day. I still talk to Amanda sometimes, the only one who occasionally shows guilt. But even when she says, "I know you're capable," her actions speak louder. She's never introduced me as someone successful in the family. I'm not waiting for approval anymore. I built the Bastion from the ground up. A former factory turned into a hotel that Architectural Digest called a place where time slows down. I interviewed every staff member myself, chose the bed linens, and mapped the lighting layout on each floor. And now, they're throwing a party here. They'll walk through the lobby I designed, sip the wine I selected, wander the garden I curated, and sit in the ballroom, where every line and texture carries my fingerprint, all while believing I'm the lost one. I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and watched the warm office light cast across the wooden wall behind me. Then, I opened an email from events. Parker family reunion, entire 10th floor reserved. Special request, top-tier service, no mistakes. I leaned back farther, a small smile crept in. I grew up in a two-storm Oakwood home in suburban Santa Barbara, where everything was measured in grades, awards, and the number of letters after your name. My father used to hang his children's degrees on the wall in order of contribution to the Parker legacy, as he put it. Every time someone achieved something, a new frame went up. Top right corner, Michael's MD. Next to it, Amanda's law degree, then Kyle's first finance award. I had a degree too, Cornell, with honors. It lives in a wooden box tucked inside my bookshelf, nowhere near that wall. At family gatherings, I often felt like the odd guest at a panel. Everyone had something to present. Michael saved a life. Amanda won a lawsuit against a corporation. Kyle closed a multi-million-dollar deal. When it came to me, Aunt Carol would usually jump in before I could even speak. Emma's doing something hotel, right? Yeah, I just launched. She's great at service, I'm sure. Who knows, maybe she'll open a little cafe. Next, no one laughed out loud, but I could see the sidelong glances and the polite exhales from my mother's side. The nods were brief. Then the conversation shifted to real estate, stocks, tax law. I'd often excuse myself to refill the tea or help in the kitchen just to avoid sitting through another minute of that. In middle school, I once turned our garage into a gallery. Fairy lights, hand-drawn invitations, a tiny front desk. My mom walked in, looked around, and said, "You should have used that time to practice math." I remember quietly unplugging the lights. I was 12. I learned early that in my house, being different meant being wrong. I don't hate my family, I just don't belong to them. My father once said, "Emma's smart but aimless." I overheard him on the phone, thinking I wasn't home. I was folding laundry with the door half open. I kept folding, though my hands trembled. The last family dinner I attended was in winter 2020. It was at Michael's place, a luxury home overlooking the red rocks of Sedona. Amanda arrived late in a cream trench coat and announced, "I'm flying to Tokyo next week for the International Law Conference." My mom set down her knife, eyes bright. "Wow, that's truly impressive." I sat next to Kyle. He asked, "You still at that hotel job?" "It's called the Bastion, Kyle." "Right, my bad. It's fine. No one's forcing you to do something big." I remember staying silent, dipping a carrot into sauce, but not eating it. Something inside me quieted down. I've learned not to react. Reacting only made them think I was overly sensitive. They didn't see anything wrong with what they said, so I stayed silent, observed, documented, like a detective in her own house. I always had the sense they were waiting for me to quit, as if hospitality was a phase. When I said I was building a brand, they heard it like I was dabbling in nail art. No one asked questions. No one really cared. I never told them the Bastion was mine, because I knew they wouldn't believe it, and if they did, they'd chalk it up to someone else. She probably had investors, must have inherited something, not because they were cruel, just because they couldn't imagine me doing anything beyond their small expectations. At moments like those, I remember what Helen, my college mentor, once said, "Emma, you don't owe anyone proof. Just keep doing your work, and do it so well they can't ignore it." I don't need applause. I just want them to realize there are things as valuable as a medical degree. They just don't fit in a frame. And now they're hosting their party at the Bastion. Without a clue, I stepped out of the office, passed through the lobby, and glanced back at the brown leather chair I had custom made from a workshop in Vermont. The lights were soft, slow jazz played in the background, and the faint scent of cedar lingered in the air. Everything here was a part of me. From the curtain fabric to the sound of the doors opening, I had touched every single detail. I stood at the front desk and looked at the antique brass wall clock. Only 10 days left. 10 more days and they would walk in. I would be somewhere nearby, watching them place their luggage, sit on the sofa I chose. They wouldn't know. Not yet, at least. I just didn't know what I'd do next. But I was certain of one thing: I would no longer stay in the background. I didn't expect those 10 days to pass so quickly. I still remember that night when I was 19, sitting in the dorm courtyard in Ithaca, phone pressed to my ear, palm damp with tension. On the other end, my father's voice was steady, colder than the October air in New York. "We agreed, Emma. Next semester's tuition won't be paid unless you re-enroll in the pre-law program. My mother was on the other line, her voice softer but no less firm. We're not doing this to punish you, we just want you to have a stable future. I looked up and watched bright red leaves drift slowly around the stone bench. A breeze swept by, carrying the scent of coffee from the cafe across the street. I heard myself respond, voice quiet but steady. Then cut it off. I'll figure it out on my own. I hung up before they could say anything else. Not to seem brave, but because if I heard one more word, I wouldn't be able to keep my voice from breaking. The following week, I started the night shift at a small hotel north of town, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. At first, I just answered phones and balanced the books. After 3 weeks, I learned how to clean elevators without leaving streaks, fold towels like I was preparing for royalty. During the day, I nodded off over library desks. Coffee stopped helping. I once failed an exam because I slept through class. I still remember the pins and needles in my fingers while gripping a pen, forcing out words for an essay when my brain couldn't form a single, coherent sentence. On weekends, I waited tables at parent receptions and hospitality conferences. I learned how to smile on cue and dodge questions like, "Is that your daughter working the buffet?" I stopped calling home, not out of anger, I just had nothing to say that they would understand. When winter came, I landed a house-sitting gig for a hospitality professor, Mrs. Margot. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor with a fireplace and a velvet-covered piano. I slept on the sofa, brewed tea in the mornings, and walked through snow to class. She didn't ask many questions, just handed me the key and said, "You're the most diligent student I've ever met." I didn't tell anyone my family had cut me off. Even my roommate just assumed I was working for experience. I kept everything in a notebook, savings, shifts, exam dates, and my vinegar and paper towel trick for streak-free mirrors. One night, after a drunk guest shattered a vase in the lobby, I slumped down in the security room, boots still muddy with slush. I ordered vending machine ramen, hands shaking with hunger, and passed out on the table before the noodles softened. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about success. I was thinking about whether I'd wake up in time for the next quiz, and if I had enough gas money for the weekend. I lived like that for 3 years. No spring breaks, no college parties, no care packages from home, but I survived. And I don't regret it. In my senior year, I was promoted to shift supervisor at Statler, the student-run hotel on Cornell's campus. It was the first time I saw my name on a schedule with the word supervisor beside it. I stood in the mirror in my black uniform, lightly touching my name tag. It wasn't pride I felt. It was relief, like someone had finally believed I was capable. I graduated with a GPA of 3.6, not the highest, but solid and clean. At commencement, there were no flowers, no one waiting outside the hall. I stood in the drizzle, hugging my portfolio to my chest, took one photo, then went straight back to work. I've never sent that photo to anyone. But I keep it in a frame next to a card from Mrs. Margot. Success is staying steady when the wind tries to move you. I don't think I'm special, I just didn't want to live a life someone else had scripted for me. And now, when I look back on those years, I don't recall every event clearly, but I remember the feeling of cleaning a floor just right, the smile of a guest when the room was warm enough, the sound of the lock turning when I opened my own place for the first time. My first job after graduation was at a 2-star hotel near the Amarillo Airport in Texas. No luxury. No suites, no fresh flowers at the front desk. Their guest service meant fixing leaky air conditioners at 2 a.m. and hunting down clean towels in an old storage room for late arrivals. I lived in a ground floor apartment with drywall walls and windows facing the parking lot. The rickety space heater clicked every time I turned it on. Summers were blazing, winters bone dry. I ate canned soup, bought clothes at thrift stores, and drove to work in a beat-up pickup I bought from a maintenance guy. It stalled every time the temperature dropped below 40. One Saturday night, while dealing with a guest complaint about cigarette smells in a non-smoking room, I apologized and forced down a sigh. After everything settled, I sat in the break room, slumped into a broken chair with a plastic cup of water, and cried quietly. I didn't know what I was doing there. I wasn't sure I still believed in the path I had chosen. As I was wiping my face, a man knocked on the door. He wore a long brown coat, carried a clipboard, and had a kind smile. "I'm Jackson Miller," he said. "I'm the regional director for this hotel chain." I stood up immediately. "I'm sorry. I'll change into my uniform. I didn't know there was an inspection tonight." He shook his head. "No need. I just like to observe unannounced." I made him a cup of coffee from the old machine and told him how I handled shift rotations, managed room turnover, and kept guest satisfaction scores above average despite the staffing issues. He didn't take notes, just nodded, occasionally asking a pointed question. Before he left, he placed a hand on the table and said, "You have something rare. You still care about the guest experience, even when you're running on empty. That can't be taught." I didn't say anything, just nodded. Later that night, I opened a drawer, pulled out a red envelope my mother had sent for Lunar New Year 4 years prior. Inside was a $50 bill and a note. "I hope this year you find something truly worthwhile." I kept that bill in my wallet, untouched. 2 months later, Jackson called. He said I could try a boutique hotel in Albuquerque that was struggling with operations. I packed up, drove 8 hours, bringing 3 boxes of books, 2 suitcases of clothes, a small fan, and a fragile hope that this was the real turning point. The new hotel was called Indigo South, exposed brick walls, amber lights, and a soft oak scent. But the staff was in chaos, overlapping shifts, understaffed kitchen, ignored guest reviews. I rolled up my sleeves and rebuilt everything: timesheets, towel folds, buffet presentation. I worked 16 hours a day, ate peanut butter sandwiches in the meeting room, slept 4 hours, then went back to the front desk. But by the third month, returning guests increased. Online ratings crept up from 2.8 to 4.3. By the fourth month, revenue rose by 38%. I received my first bonus ever, $3,000. I almost called my mother, not to brag, just to share. I dialed. She answered after the third ring. "Mom, I wanted to share some good news." "Oh, you know what? Amanda is about to be promoted to Chief of State Prosecution. The party's in Santa Fe next month. If you come, try to dress appropriately." I paused for a moment. "I see. Congratulations to her. And you, still doing night shift management?" "Something like that." "Well, take care of yourself. I've got a Zoom meeting now." The call ended with a long beep. I set the phone down, opened the bonus envelope, and pulled out the check. Part of me wanted to cash it and send money home. Part of me knew no one would really care where it came from. I didn't send it. I framed it, placed it on the bookshelf, right next to The Art of Hospitality, its margins nearly filled with notes. I started to understand. I could love this work without needing anyone to tell me it was worth loving. I didn't care about reputation. I just wanted to create a place where people felt welcome, the way I once wished I had. And then Jackson called again. Jackson brought me to Chicago in the spring of 2021. His voice was still steady, light as early season wind. "There's a small hotel in Wicker Park looking for someone to rebuild it from the inside out. Not high pay, but full operational control. You want it?" I said yes the moment I heard full control. The hotel was called Haven. Tucked into an artsy neighborhood, it used to be a run-down inn, later converted into a boutique space, but without any real identity. Inside were patchy hallways with fresh paint, dark carpets hiding cracked tiles, and a synthetic citrus scent that hit the nose as soon as you opened the door. I walked in like it was a blank canvas. No fanfare, no expectations, just a tired staff and a 3.1 rating on booking platforms. That first month, I didn't make any big changes. I observed. I worked the front desk, cleaned rooms with housekeeping, placed breakfast orders with the chef on morning shifts. I asked departing guests, "How did the room make you feel?" Not, "Were you satisfied?" but, "How did it feel?" Guests began leaving little notes. "Thank you for the soft pillow, just how I like it." "I've never been greeted by my full name at check-in before." I saved every note, pinned them on the corkboard behind my desk monitor. I rebuilt the booking system, switching from old Excel sheets to software that could personalize returning guest perks. I redid the minibar menu, added real chamomile tea and handmade chocolate from a shop 3 blocks away. I altered the cleaning protocol, one extra step, spritzing pillows with essential oils distilled on site instead of synthetic sprays. Costs went up slightly, but within 2 months, 5-star reviews began to rise. I started seeing repeat booking emails from familiar names. One person even wrote, "I came back because you remembered I like my coffee black." Having turned a small profit in Q2, I received a modest bonus. But instead of framing it, I used it to print thank you cards for every staff member. Each one read, "A hotel isn't built with bricks. It's built by people who ask the right questions at the right time." It was during that time I met Sophia. One Thursday evening, I was invited to a small hospitality gathering at a rooftop bar near the Chicago River. I didn't plan to go, but the night shift manager insisted. "You need to get out. We've got it." I wore a black button-up, gray trousers, and a pair of shoes I once used for job interviews 6 years ago. When I arrived, I stood alone by the railing, holding a soda, listening to a nearby group discuss Gen Z hotel concepts. Sophia stood 3 people away, platinum blonde hair tied back, clear framed glasses, eyes sharp but not cold. She said very little, just nodded or asked 2 words, "Why not?" When the group dispersed, I was about to leave when she approached. "You're with Haven, right?" "Yeah. Jackson mentioned you last week." I nodded. "He tends to exaggerate." She tilted her head. "He didn't say much. Just sent me a customer review and wrote, 'If you want to invest in real hospitality, meet this one.'" I didn't know what to say. She smiled. "Do you have a vision for a hotel?" I spoke about hospitality as psychology, about emotional architecture, about how a stranger could enter a space and feel like they belong. I talked about hallway lighting ratios, the sound of footsteps on carpet, the scent of sun-dried linen. She didn't take notes, didn't interrupt, just listened. "My office in West Loop next week. Bring a description of your ideal hotel. No floor plans, just feelings." That night, I returned to Haven and wrote until 3 in the morning. Not a financial plan, a story about a hotel where every detail reflected one thing: intentional kindness. The next week, Sophia invested. A small seed fund, just enough to begin. I registered a company, Lark and Pine Hospitality. The name came from a bird I often saw on the windowsill of my old Amarillo apartment, and the pine trees outside Indigo South, where I once folded towels under warm yellow light. I leased an old Art Deco building in Logan Square, moved into the attic unit to oversee every phase of the renovation myself. No one knocked to cheer me on, but every morning I made coffee, sat on a wooden crate among blueprints, and knew, deep down, I'd been preparing for this a long time. That April, the first hotel by Lark and Pine, the Bastion, opened in Old Town, Denver. I chose Denver not for strategy, but for something personal. No one from my family lived nearby. No one from my old life had a reason to visit. I needed space to build something on my own terms, without interference, without being watched from a family bleacher. The hotel had only 40 rooms. White brick walls, warm yellow lighting, each floor a different palette: olive green, terracotta, ash gray. I lived on the top floor, in a small apartment behind the operations room, where I could look down at the lobby unseen. At night, I'd walk the halls, check carpets, straighten chairs, and stop outside each room door, not to knock, just to look at the numbers, as if each held a story unfolding inside. We ran no ads. I simply sent a few emails to former guests from Haven with handwritten notes. "If you ever find yourself in Denver, I think this place will suit you." In the first 2 months, we averaged 86% occupancy. 3 months in, VIP guests began showing up unannounced. A Pulitzer-winning author tweeted he slept the best at the Bastion. An indie film director booked 4 nights to write a script. They came for the quiet, stayed for the feeling that someone remembered their name without asking for it twice. I didn't notify the press, I didn't accept interviews. Only Sophia and my team knew I was the one behind it all. That summer, we received investment offers from two real estate development funds in San Diego and Portland. Sophia asked, "Do you want to expand?" I took 2 weeks to consider, then nodded, but with conditions. No hotel would exceed 80 rooms, and the team had to be trained directly by me. 3 years after naming Lark and Pine, we had 5 locations, one in Denver, two in California, one in Austin, and a small hotel on a Montauk hill overlooking the Atlantic. I still kept the habit of living on the top floor of each new property for at least the first 6 months. I wanted to feel the morning air in the hallway, the rhythm of footsteps across the wood floors, the sound of the coffee machine starting up, and the glow of amber light spilling from the front doors after dusk. We never held grand openings. Each time we launched, I only invited those who had once written the most heartfelt thank you notes, people who recognized the value of thoughtfulness without needing a spotlight. I never shared any of that with my family, not because I was hiding, but because they never asked. I still received birthday messages from my mother, wishing you a more stable year ahead. I still think you should consider applying for state-level management. The hospitality industry needs more people with law degrees. That last sentence was added after Amanda was nominated for the Urban Policy Advisory Council in Santa Fe. I read it, smiled, then locked my phone. I didn't delete that message. I kept it as proof that I had moved beyond the need for validation. 3 months before I learned about the Parker family reunion in Denver, I met Rachel. She came to interview for the operations assistant role at the Bastion. Dark brown hair, white-collared shirt, a gaze that didn't waver. Her resume showed 3 years with a major hotel chain, with no clear reason listed for her departure. I asked, "Why did you leave your last job?" She looked at me for a few seconds. "Because I reported abuse of power by management. No one believed me, and I was forced to quit." I nodded slightly. "And now? I want to work somewhere that listening isn't a luxury." I didn't need more. She was hired. If you've ever stayed silent because no one believed you, or been blamed just for telling the truth, leave a comment. Share this story if you believe someone out there needs to hear it. It was Rachel who first alerted me about the Parker family reunion. One August morning, she knocked on my office door, holding an iPad. "Emma, there's a request to reserve the entire third floor for a family event. I thought, maybe you'd want to see this." I took the iPad, scanned the contact name. Carol Bennett, email carol.b@parkerlegacy.org. I set the iPad on the desk, then opened the calendar. They had chosen the Bastion. And still, no one mentioned me on the guest list. I wasn't surprised. But this time, I wouldn't be silent. I just hadn't decided when or how I would show up. I didn't respond to the booking confirmation email. I didn't text anyone in the family group. I simply forwarded the reservation to Deanna, the Bastion's director of operations, with one short note. Treat with the highest standard. No mention of any personal connection. Diana understood immediately. "Of course," she replied. "They'll be treated like every VIP guest, with meticulous care down to the last detail." I spent the following week reviewing every protocol, from how the juice was placed in the minibar to the handwritten card on each pillow. Not to impress, but so I owed myself nothing in terms of preparation. Friday afternoon, I stepped into the security control room. 6 monitors displayed every zone: main lobby, reception desk, elevator area, garden, restaurant, conference room. Rachel sat beside me, silent, opening the list of Parker family members who had checked in. "Your father just arrived," she said, pointing at a silver-haired man in a dark knit jacket holding a leather briefcase. "Mrs. Evelyn's behind him." I watched them standing at the front desk. 2 figures I once knew by heart, now appearing on camera like a reenactment. My father placed his credit card on the counter, never making eye contact with a staff member. My mother stood still, eyes scanning the lobby like she was evaluating whether the space met her dignified dinner standards. Another staff member brought over lemon water and cool towels. She accepted them, nodded, no smile. 10th floor, room 1001, Rachel said, tapping something on her tracker. Mountain view, corner window, as specifically requested. I nodded, not out of pride, but because I knew they had just entered a space where I had scrubbed each floor tile, tested every wood panel to select the one that made the gentlest closing sound. An hour later, I saw Kyle arrive with his girlfriend. Blonde hair, navy dress, phone still in hand. He walked briskly through the lobby, not noticing the hand-woven rug underfoot, custom made from an artisan's studio in Santa Fe. Amanda came in later that afternoon, one hand holding a bag, the other texting. Her coat draped neatly over one shoulder, lips pressed in that way she always did when trying not to show fatigue. Aunt Carol arrived last, towing a Louis Vuitton suitcase with two assistants behind her. She waved a hand as Diana came to greet her, then called out, "I need a room upgrade. Is the corner suite available?" Deanna replied with a professional smile. "I'm sorry, the corner suite is already reserved, but your room is larger and faces downtown. Let's hope it's worth the price." I looked across the monitor and caught the face of a front desk staff member stepping away, looking briefly confused. Rachel swiveled her chair toward me. "Are you still sure you want to keep your identity private?" "Absolutely." I went downstairs, walking slowly through the balcony garden where a few kids were playing tag among the lavender pots. Inside, I felt no turmoil, no expectation, no regret. Just one quiet truth. I was seeing them from an entirely new angle, not from below, and no longer needing to hide. That night, they had dinner in the hotel restaurant. I sat in a small adjoining room, the soundproof walls just thin enough to catch the scrapings of chairs, clinking of glasses, and scattered laughter as someone recalled an old story. I recognized Michael's voice, my oldest brother, talking about a recent successful surgery. Amanda chimed in with a courtroom anecdote. Kyle bragged that his investment firm had just closed an 8-figure funding round. When it came to my turn, just like every year, there was a brief moment of silence. Then someone would chuckle lightly and change the subject. I listened, and that moment unfolded exactly as it always had. Aunt Carol gave a small laugh and said, "Emma is still off doing her own thing. Hopefully she's okay." My father said nothing. My mother asked the waiter, "Could I have a different glass of wine? This one's a bit sharp." I tapped gently on the side table next to me, signaling the staff to serve dessert. Chocolate souffle with rosemary and dried orange. A dish I'd selected just for tonight. Soft, sweet, and just unexpected enough to be remembered. I didn't enter the room. Didn't say a word, I just sat quietly, listening to them live out their roles. I don't know if they suspected anything, but up to that point, no one had asked about my name on the staff list. I don't intend to stay hidden forever. I'm just waiting for the right moment. I think tomorrow night, their official banquet, might be the time, but I just don't know what they'll see in my eyes when I walk in. On Saturday night, the Bastion was more polished than usual, though our standard left no room for error. The floral arrangements were trimmed to match the event's palette: mint green, pale cream, and lemon yellow. Candles were spaced with precision I'd once measured in footsteps. A 3-piece string band played soft jazz in the corner of the ballroom. No one knew that the playlist had been curated from cassette tapes my mother used to listen to in the 80s. I stood in the executive office, my reflection softened by the dim light against the glass. The dress I wore was deep indigo, simple in cut, the fabric slightly matte as it moved. I didn't want to stand out, just to walk in without carrying a trace of the old Emma. Diana knocked. "Everything's ready," she said. "Would you like me to give you the signal when it's time?" I shook my head. "No need. They'll ask for the manager the moment something's off." She smiled. "Then it won't be long." I nodded. Diana stepped out. I paused for a few seconds, then walked toward the side entrance of the ballroom. Behind the one-way glass wall, I could see everything inside. Glittering tables, light bouncing off crystal glasses, My family, seated at the first three tables, close to the main stage. Aunt Carol stood in the center of the room, raising her champagne glass. Her voice was steady, not loud, but firm. The Parker family name was built on three things: discipline, class, and legacy. We're here tonight not only to celebrate the past, but to remind each other that each of us carries the duty to uphold those values. I leaned against the wall, feeling the soft fabric at my shoulders press into the cold wood. They were still living in a frame they had constructed themselves. Every sentence from Aunt Carol drove another nail into that old foundation. We are proud of Michael, a leading cardiologist at UCLA. Amanda, who's heading the Justice Reform Committee in New Mexico. Kyle, with his sustainable investment network across the East Coast. And let us not forget those who are absent for whatever reason. A few soft laughs scattered. I didn't need to hear my name. My absence was enough of a topic. And then, just as I predicted, a small incident occurred. A server accidentally dropped a bit of red wine onto the tablecloth near Aunt Carol. The sound of a glass lightly tapping porcelain, then a spoon pausing. Not loud, but just enough to still the room. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the server murmured. And Carol looked up. "This is unacceptable." Diana moved in quickly, her voice calm. "We're very sorry. We'll handle it immediately. I want to speak to whoever's in charge, right now." Diana turned back, her eyes meeting mine through the frosted glass. I nodded. I entered the ballroom through the side door, walking slowly but without hesitation. As I approached the central table, the music paused right between songs. The room stilled. "Good evening," I said. "I'm Emma Parker. I heard there was a matter that needed addressing." And Carol's face slowly changed, as if she were trying to rearrange her memories to match the person standing before her. My mother held her breath. My father blinked twice, his gaze flicking from his wineglass back to me. Michael was the first to speak. "Emma." I nodded. "Yes, it's me." Kyle nearly laughed, then stopped midway. Amanda set her glass down, her back straightening. I looked around the room at every detail I had helped design, and let my gaze settle on the people who once decided I wasn't worthy. "You are seated in a hotel I own and operate. The Bastion is part of Lark and Pine Hospitality, a boutique hotel chain with 6 locations across the United States. I'm the founder." No one spoke. I didn't feel above them or vindicated, just like I'd turned on the lights in a room that had been dark for 20 years. I turned to the young server beside me, his face still pale. "You okay?" He gave a small nod. "Good, then head back to the kitchen, grab a clean cloth, and keep going. Every small mistake is a chance to show care without condition." I faced the table again. "Mrs. Carroll, we'll have the cloth cleaned and your dessert served on time. If there's anything else you're unhappy with, I'm here." She said nothing, just nodded, her eyes unsure of where to land. I stepped back and addressed the room clearly. "I'm not saying this to be recognized. I'm saying it because I'm tired of the silence, not to prove anything, just to put an end to people thinking they know who I am." I looked at my mother. She wasn't crying, but her hands clenched the edge of the table. I left the ballroom without rushing. The door closed behind me, the music resumed. But it no longer sounded the same. I walked straight back to the executive office, not to hide, but to take a breath free from any watching eyes. No clinking glasses, no background music, just the sound of my footsteps on the wood floor and a heartbeat still finding its rhythm. I opened the door, sat in the swivel chair, resting my hand lightly on the desk. The hallway light cast a glow across the tabletop, catching a small thank you card leaning on the holder. I picked it up, one of the handwritten notes from a guest. "You have no idea how you saved me that dark weekend." I didn't remember the face, but I remembered folding the card and placing it in the room on the 8th floor. The one where the guest had asked for a quiet corner and soft lighting. I sat like that for nearly 20 minutes. No one knocked, no urgent messages, no anger, no apologies, and I wasn't expecting any. Around 9:30, a soft knock sounded. I looked up. Rachel cracked the door open. "Amanda's outside," she said. "She just wants to speak privately." I nodded. Amanda stepped in, took off her coat, folded it neatly, and placed it on the armrest across from me. No evening gown, no red lipstick, just the woman who used to be my sister, hair tied low, gaze steady, voice slightly hoarse like after a long meeting. Emma. She said my name like she was weighing between familiarity and all the years in between. I simply nodded. I didn't offer tea or pleasantries. She glanced around the room, then asked quietly, "All of this? Is it real?" I tilted my head. Depends on how you define real. If you're asking whether you just had dinner in a hotel I own and run, yes. If you're asking whether I built a boutique hotel chain from scratch, also yes. I didn't stage anything. She inhaled slowly, then exhaled. He used to say you were stubborn but principled. Yeah, she looked at me, not like someone watching, but like someone trying to read pages she'd skipped. Em still doesn't get why you never said anything. Maybe because of all those dinners I stayed silent and he never once asked. She lowered her gaze to the photo behind my desk. Me at the Bastion's construction site, wearing a hard hat, holding blueprints. "I wanted to tell you, many times," I said, voice even, every time a floor was completed, every thank you letter from guests, every time the Bastion was mentioned in the press. But I imagined the reaction. A half-hearted nod, or an invitation to a family meeting to parade the accomplishment. And it didn't feel worth it. Amanda held my gaze a bit longer, then, without defensiveness, she said, "I thought you were living some little dream, until today." I didn't react. She continued, "Michael's pacing around the hotel. Kyle's out on the veranda, not saying a word. Mom and Dad are in their room. Mom just shut the door. Dad said no one should come in." I wasn't surprised. I knew they needed time. Not to accept the truth, but to recalibrate how they classified me in the family system. From the self-sufficient one who never really made it, to the one who just made them all take a second look. "And you?" I asked. She paused. "I'm tired." It wasn't defensive, it wasn't curated. I've always done the right things, career, family, reputation. But every year I feel like I drift further from who I used to be. I stayed quiet. I used to think you'd made the wrong choice, but now, maybe you chose courage and I chose safety. She didn't say it to assign blame or seek forgiveness, just like someone standing on the far bank, realizing the distance wasn't just about geography. I stood, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled down a slim envelope. "This is an invitation to the opening of our new hotel in Portland. Lark and Pine is about to launch its 7th property. If you have time, come by, no need to make a speech." She took it, fingers gripping the edge, then nodded. "Barely." "I don't need anyone's apology," I said. "I just need to be heard. When I'm ready to speak." Amanda looked at me, this time not trying to place me, just seeing me. Then she left, with no promises, but her steps slowed. I watched her disappear behind the door. And just a few minutes later, another knock. The door opened, and it was my mother, standing there in her old chocolate-colored wool coat, holding a steaming plastic cup of tea. The scent of orange cinnamon drifted in, the blend she always brewed on anxious days. "Emma," she said, not quite meeting my eyes, "can I come in?" I hesitated for a beat, then nodded. She stepped inside, placed the cup on the desk, but didn't sit. "It's a beautiful hotel," she said, eyes still on the carpet. "Must taken a lot of effort." I didn't respond. I didn't need praise for what they once dismissed. "Your father, he's not ready to talk." She took a deep breath. "But I need to say something." My fingers curled slightly around the edge of the desk. "It's not that I didn't see your effort, I did. I just didn't know how to be close to you without messing it up." Her voice raspier than usual, every word like it had been pulled from a dusty shelf of memory. "I used to think staying silent kept the peace, but really, I just made peace with letting others carry the weight." I looked at her, the woman who once quietly wrapped Amanda's birthday gifts with money I sent, never saying thank you. She looked up, for the first time meeting my eyes. You may not need me to say sorry, but I still want to. No music, no glowing lights, just two women in a quiet room, surrounded by cinnamon tea and years of silence. I nodded gently. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to stop siding with silence. She smiled, a tired but genuine smile. 1 week later, I returned to Seattle. The apartment I once rented was now someone else's. I lived in a modest penthouse in Capitol Hill, close enough to see the city I loved, far enough that no one dropped by unannounced. I still ran Larkin Pine, but I stopped checking email after 9 p.m. Instead, I cooked. I learned to bake bread. I called Amanda every weekend, not to revisit old wounds, but to hear her talk about her backyard garden. I also called Kyle, the boy who once clung behind Dad's leg, now studying photography at a community college. I sent him an old camera with a note. Send me the first photo you're truly proud of. The first one I got was a shot of a coffee mug on a balcony rail, sunlight catching droplets on the glass. Simple, but honest. I didn't write back praise. I just said, your perspective has value. That's what I once wished someone had told me. Next month, I'll return to Chicago to open a new location, not in a glitzy area, but in an old building near the lake where I used to walk while surviving on tutoring money. I won't cut a ribbon. I'll just stand in the back watching guests step into the lobby, not looking for who's in charge, but looking for a space that makes them feel safe. That evening, I sat on the wooden bench outside the hotel, hands clasped together, watching the deep blue lake reflect the soft golden lights. No one came near, no one asked how I was. But I didn't feel empty. I felt whole. I used to think my goal was success, but now I understand. What I was searching for wasn't recognition. It was the freedom to live without apologizing for being different. I didn't choose to leave my family. I simply refused to stay in a role that no longer fit. I don't know where you're listening from, in your car, before bed, or on a day when you needed a story to remind you to stand tall. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you'd like to hear more honest journeys like this one, don't forget to follow the channel. The next story might be exactly what you've been needing. Emma's story isn't just about breaking free from family manipulation. It's a reminder that sometimes, to find peace, we must accept losing the approval of those closest to us. Family doesn't always mean love. Sometimes it's where we first learn about boundaries and self-worth. Emma didn't win through revenge. She won by building a life she didn't have to apologize for, a life she chose on her own terms.